Today, I'm building a low-tech bonsai scape for a client, and I'll be scaping it right here in my home office. I'll be keeping this scape in my home office for a couple of weeks to make sure there's no algae issues in the beginning, and then I'll move it over to the client's home. Let's get started. Now for this build, I'll be using the UNS 45U aquarium, and I want to add a background to this tank. So because my client specifically requested a bonsai scape and has a love for Endler guppies, I want to add a black background. Having the black background will allow the colors of the fish and the plants to really just pop at the client's home. So I'm opting for black rather than white or crystal. I think black will just look better. So let's get that background added onto the tank and let's get right into scaping. Once the black background was on the glass, I give it a quick cleaning to make sure that there was no debris or fingerprints on the inside of the tank. For the stone in this scape, I'll be using a stone that I honestly have no clue what it's called. I've had this stone in my closet for ages and I've honestly forgotten the name at this point. But it seems to be of the Siriu stone type, and I think it looks great, and I think it'll be a perfect addition to the scape. Once the stones were in place, it was time to get the centerpiece of this hardscape in the tank, the bonsai tree. Once that was in, I emptied the hardscape, and it was time to add in the aqua soil. Now, just like every build, I like to start by adding in the starter bacteria by 2 Hour Aquarist. I find that this always does a good job of helping my tanks get off on the right foot. Next up was the aqua soil, and as always, I'll be using UNS Contra soil for this build. With the soil in the tank, it was time to build a slope to help create scale in the finished look. I did this by using my UNS sand flattener, which helps me effortlessly move soil around in the aquarium. Once the soil was in, it was time to add the bonsai tree back into the tank. The bonsai comes pre-attached to a lava stone, so there's no need to worry about it floating to the surface. And then I added the stones to help create a barrier between the rocks and the decorative sand, which I'll add in a little later. With the tree and the stone in place, I added a little more soil to help bury the tree and fill in the empty spaces left after the hardscaping. For the decorative sand in this setup, I'm using UNS Contra Sand Bora. This was a specific request by the client, and I think it'll look really nice. Again, I'm using the sand flattener here to help move the sand into place. The last thing I wanted to do was pour the sand in too quickly and cause it to splash onto the aqua soil. Next, I'm adding a few detail stones along the edge of the rocks and the sand. This will help make the transition between the hardscape and the sand more cohesive. To get a really natural looking effect when doing this, I like to hold my hand about 4 inches above the soil and let the stone drop into place naturally. I find that this really works well. Now that the hardscape is complete, it's time to get to planting. This will be a low-tech aquarium, so I wanted to put easy, low-maintenance plants in this tank. For the first plant, I've selected some dwarf hairgrass. This will be one of the main plants in the scape and should fill out nicely to create a nice grassy field under the tree. I had a ton of hair grass to plant, and it took me significantly longer than I'd like to admit to plant it. Dwarf hairgrass is one of my favorite plants to keep, so when the client asked me specifically for this, I was super excited to get it in the tank. Next was Cryptocoron parva. This is probably my favorite plant to use when it comes to detailed work, and it fit perfectly in the little crevices of the stone. Now, even though I'm planting the parva into the sand, it'll be just fine, because not only can parva survive and thrive in sand, but it'll also shoot its roots under the rocks and into the nutrient aquasoil on the other side of the stone wall. Once I had all the parva in place, it was time for the feature plant of this setup, and that's Monte Carlo. Normally, when building bonsai trees, people would use moss to act as the leaves of the tree, but in this case, the client didn't want moss. So I decided to go with Monte Carlo because I felt that it would fill out the tree nice and thick and achieve the same look as moss without the hassle of having moss grow everywhere in the aquarium. The bonsai tree in this scape has super cool little notches in the canopy, which make it perfect to stick to the Monte Carlo, and it'll also help hold the plants down in place. With the canopy of the tree planted with Monte Carlo, all that's left to do is fill up the tank and get the filter started.